Fall camp is here, but recruiting never sleeps. Where is UCF at in recruiting, and what do they have to do?
You are Locked On UCF, your daily podcast on the UCF Knights. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on into Locked On UCF, your daily UCF podcast. I'm your host, Mike G, and thank you so much for making us your first listen of every day. Turn us up, turn us on, we'll turn it out. I'm here with my good friend, Brian Smith from The Portal. Go check them out on YouTube. Locked On The Portal, giving us all the great Portal news and recruiting news. Brian, this is a recruiting episode. UCF is 71st in recruiting. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what's out there in recruiting, and then we'll end the show talking about the house settlement and a little NIL update. Let's start with UCF 71st in recruiting right now. They've got 15 commits in the class. They've got guys like Dante, Carr, and Kane Archer in the fold at QB. But you know, you have come on this show and said repeatedly, Scott Frost has to focus on building his lines. He's got to build offensive and defensive line. He's got to get tough in the trenches. What's out there in recruiting right now? And if you're Scott Frost, how do you fill those needs with what's available right now in recruiting?
They're going to have to flip some kids because I was listening to a podcast earlier today with Andrew Ivins. Of course, he's 24/7 recruiting guy. And like 90% of the kids that matter, they're already committed. So there's a handful of guys that could still go after Georgia, Florida, etc., but they're going to have to flip players. They do have Hassan Idurisu, if I'm pronouncing that right, a kid from Connecticut, which is random, but he's a 6'6" defensive lineman. I like him a lot, but they need 3 or 4 of those kind of guys to play at the Power 4 level, not one. So, and then the trenches overall, if you look at UCF's class right now, they've only got 5 linemen between offense and defense combined. Yeah. Brother, that's not going to get it done. This roster needs a pretty big overhaul. Not that they have bad players. They just don't have enough of them. Like, they need to sign another 6-7 guys at least, and there's still time, but they're going to do some flipping. And that really predicates to me on this season going well. And I'm not sure that's going to happen in the first year.
Yeah, look, you mentioned Hassan Idurisu, I believe that's how you pronounce his name. If I butchered that, I apologize. The 4-star edge, he is the crown jewel of this recruiting class so far. But when you're looking, they've got Isaiah McNeish on the D line. Jaden Curtis is another 3-star D lineman that they have there. 2 linemen in this class. They've got offensive tackle Keziah Charlton. And they've got Amon Williams as well, too. It feels like finding high level, especially offensive linemen, is really, really difficult in recruiting because those guys are, as you mentioned, recruiting. They're committing elsewhere. So, the flip game that Scott Frost is going to have to play here is going to be really difficult, I think, in season. How much of this do you think, if they can get off to a hot start to the season, does that make this a little bit easier? Is there anything UCF can do on the field, maybe even to say, hey, look, we're a better destination for you than maybe you thought?
That's not just important, Mike. That's paramount because you've got new coaches. They want to see it. In today's society, nobody trusts anybody. I think that's a pretty safe assumption. Let's be honest. Parents especially. So the kids kind of learn that at an early age too, and you can sell them, this is the vision. Hey, you can be the guy. But now they want to watch that game, watch those highlights, see those clips. Is this fun to play in? Is this going to help me get to the NFL? And of course, the obvious, are y'all winning some football games? Nobody wants to go join a team they don't think they can be competitive in whatever the league they're in. So if they do not start hot, I think it would be a bigger deal because it's year 1 for Frost. In round 2, obviously he's coached at UCF before, but they need, like, that North Carolina game. We can just use that as the marker. Yeah. Like, there are going to be a lot of eyeballs on that game. That's the first contest that they're going to have somebody in that's like, oh, this, there's some extra cachet with it. You got Belichick in the building. There's going to be some cachet with that. They need to have a good game. They need to win a game like that early. And they need something good to happen. And then on top of it, you got to capitalize when you have the kids come in for those visits. maybe get a few kids on campus that are committed to Florida or committed to Georgia Tech, whatever it is. And you got to flip some kids, especially in the trenches. The elite kids in the trenches, it is getting into a smaller and smaller and smaller group to get all the really good ones. I mean, not that they got a couple of decent linemen, but you need to get 4 and 5 of those guys a year. Here's a little stat for you. Georgia has signed 27 offensive linemen over the last 5 years. 27.
Wow.
Not only do they get high-end kids, they take so many, they just, let's call it what it is. They process kids that don't want to do the right things. They gone.
Yeah.
And, they weren't good on the offensive line last year. I bet you they're good this year. With that common math, it's just going to happen. So UCF may not take 27 in a 5-year period, but they got to start taking 4 every year. And that's going to be a bigger thing. And, maybe they'll get to that point, but they're still not even there yet. And then they need to take at least another D lineman too.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Before we started recording, I said, look, if the football gods are just, Scott Frost will give us at least 6 wins. You think that's going to be hard to come by? How do you show proof of concept in a season where you're not stacking at least, where you're not at least bowl eligible? I think that getting this team to a bowl game would be a significant achievement in year 1 if you can pull it off.
I just think that playing in the Big 12, that league is just flip a coin in most games. But this year in particular, if you go through the rosters, and I know a few of them are transfers, 12 or 13 of the QBs are starters. Now, again, they may not have started at that school, like the Dampier kid was at New Mexico before he went to Utah, etc. But just about every team you're playing's got an experienced quarterback, and most of them have recruited better than UCF on top of it. Why would I think they're going to a bowl?
Right.
I'm just being honest. I think they're going to win 4 or 5 games. So we'll see. But again, that's why that North Carolina game early in the year, they don't have as deep a roster. You got to win one of those games to show proof of concept, like you said. And if you win that one, your chances of making it to 6 are much, much higher. Need to win that UNC game. That's really big.
Yeah. Look, it's going to be an uphill battle for the UCF Knights in year 1. But when you're rebuilding a program, that's to be expected. As I mentioned at the top of the show, 71st in recruiting right now. That's going to have to get better. They've got a total of 15 commits in there. But what's available? What's available for them even to fill out the rest of this class? We'll talk about that next on Lock on UCF right after a quick word from our sponsors. This episode of Locked On UCF is brought to you by our friends at 5 Hour Energy, guys. It's time to fuel up and turn it up with 5 Hour Energy Transfusion. It brings the bold grape, ginger, and lime flavor of your favorite golf drink, minus the alcohol, into a quick energizing shot. Whether you're sinking birdies or just making memories with friends, this is a hole-in-one for your energy game. Golf is all about good times with good people and good flavors, of course. The great ginger lime flavors give you the best parts of your clubhouse to go without chasing down the beverage cart. If you go to 5hourenergy.com, that's the number 5, hourenergy.com, you can use our promo code LOCKEDONGOLF to receive $20 off your first order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. So head on over to 5hourenergy.com today. Use code LOCKEDONGOLF to receive $20 off your first order. Turn it up with 5 Hour Energy. What's available right now? What's out there? It feels like with early signing day, this is something that we talk about often when we talk about recruiting. Most of your recruits, they're getting committed for their senior season, Brian. And it is becoming more and more common for kids to enroll early, finish up, get those credits, get on a fast track to graduate, and get into spring camp where you're going to play football because, big time freshmen, they want to play year 1, and they know that getting into spring camp is key to staying ahead of those battles. So, it's getting harder to flip these guys in season because they got to sign in December if they want to play spring ball. what's available, what's out there. Are there enough quality linemen, or is Scott Frost and his staff playing the diamond in the rough game for this first year where they've got to go out and they've got to out-evaluate their Big 12 peers?
I think it'll be a little bit more of the latter, but I also, again, want to reiterate, they have to flip kids. I always tell everybody, doesn't matter the fan base, you're going to lose 3, you're going to gain 3. That's kind of like you're going to lose 3 commitments, you're going to gain 3 commitments. That's kind of the norm. But with UCF and them potentially being on the rise this year, if they have a big upset, if they have a couple of big games, whatever, why couldn't they put more than 3 guys? They've got playing time available. They're not the deepest team in the Big 12 by any stretch. It's not hard to sell you Orlando. It's a good school. Like, they should be able to do that. But right now, as far as just numbers, like looking in state, there's still plenty of good talent, but the elite kids for the most part are off the board. They need to see if they can get more into the junior class than anything, but that's a topic for another day. You got to be ahead of the game now and getting class of 27, 28 on campus.
Yeah.
And again, minimum, they need to flip 3 kids, in my opinion, to finish out this class. They need to finish in the top 50. This 71st stuff ain't cutting it. That's no good, Mike. I'm going to have to come on here and yell at you if they finish 71st. I'm going to hold you responsible for that. That's not any good, brother. That they should be able to do better because it's not hard to sell Orlando. I mean, come on, man. So that's my expectation. And I'll give them credit. They have scoured the country. They got a kid from Connecticut, got a quarterback from Arkansas. I mean, they ain't playing around. They're going national. Let's see if they get some kid from Chicago or something. That's fine too. But they need to finish somewhere in the top 50, in low 20s at least. And then when we get to that point, we need to discuss how much money they're going to have to throw down in that portal because they're going to have to throw down.
Yeah, I think that when you talk about recruiting, it's hard to ignore that the traditional high school rankings don't necessarily tell the story of how well you did acquiring players because of the portal. Now, we'll talk about NIL in our next segment, but as far as the portal is concerned, you can go out and you can fill needs if you've got a little bit of money to spend and you've got a solid opportunity for those guys to step in and play immediately. Now, Scott Frost spoke with the media just recently about kind of like the signs of readiness, for his team and, what he had to prove coming back. He also talked about returning players, i.e. players that he did not recruit or coach last year, kind of adjusting to his system. I want to play a clip. We talked about this on another show, but this is what Scott Frost had to say about returning players kind of adjusting to his system.
Coach, I know you don't have a lot of returning players from last year's roster, but of those returners, how would you evaluate their acclimation to the new cultural standard that you're trying to build? And are they breaking into leadership roles like you would maybe want to see?
I think we're getting there. Like I said, the leaders are emerging. We need to empower them now. But I like where we are. In 2016, we took over a team that hadn't won, but I looked around and saw Javius Pittman and the Griffin brothers and Wyatt and Aaron Evans and Richie Grant and Kyle Gibson. And, we had some players. They just needed to come together as a team and believe in something. I actually did a quote unquote punishment run. A couple of our players missed a couple things and we haven't had hardly any of those, but it gave me time to spend around a couple guys, one of them that'll be a leader of our team. And his comment during that was, I asked him what was different and he said, everybody's together now. And I hope that holds true because I think there's enough talent here to really surprise some people if we come together as a football team.
I think there's enough talent here to surprise some people if we come together as a football team. Scott Frost kind of giving his returning roster a vote of confidence to saying, hey, look, man, I know this is a rebuild, but I think we have enough talent to make some noise. And if he can do that, that could pay big time dividends in recruiting.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what he means by surprising people because that's subjective. Does that mean one game? Does that mean two? To me, that means going 7-5 or more. Okay. I need to see that. Now, that's just how I take it. But did you notice Scott avoided anything called numbers, like record prediction or anything?
Yeah,
he's not a dummy. Yeah, he's not a dummy. He knows this could go a lot of directions. It's first year. I wouldn't give a number either. But at the same time, I'm not saying they don't have talent. I looked at their depth chart the other day. I know a lot of those kids. They've got a few NFL guys, et cetera. Like John Walker should play in the NFL. He's a defensive tackle that's freak. He's 310 pounds. They don't normally get kids like that. This is his third year. He should be a dude. Like, they have pieces to build around. But who's going to be the offensive playmaker, and who are going to be the guys that, as he mentioned, that are leaders in those, like in the Big 12, how many one-score games are you going to play in? You got to prove to me you're going to win some of those. And then when you do that, we can go back to this subject we just started with, that's recruiting. You can then say to those kids, hey, we're winning now, but with you, we could be at the top of the Big 12. We need more talent to get to the top. And, that's their objective. So it'd be cool to see, but they got a lot of things to put together in the next few weeks because the season's almost here, bro. That's the best news. Football is almost here.
Yeah, look, I am ready to stop talking about things in theory and start talking about what these guys are doing on the field. One of the things that they're doing is they're having to pay guys to get them to come. NIL is officially here, and boy, is it a mess on some fronts. We're going to talk about the House settlement and a recent ruling. I'm going to get your thoughts on that next on Locked On UCF. The House has said that collectives are to be treated as any other third-party business, which is a win for schools wanting to just blow past their cap and spend. Because I spoke with one team, Power 4 team GM at Media Days, and he said, look, if you look at Alabama and you see that they have five-star guys in their recruiting class, and we know that you have 18 million to play with. If you're giving anything to any other sports, you maybe have 14 to 15 million to play with. He said, Mike, how the hell are they blowing a third of their cap on 5 players and they still have the money to go out and get a top 5 class if they are spending way past what is allotted? And Oklahoma and Auburn, professed that they were trying to kind of abide by those rules. UCF eliminated the kingdom. Some fans were upset. They feel like Terry Mohajner got rid of the kingdom for no reason. And they condensed it down into what they call the Competitive Success Fund. So looking at where we're at with NIL right now, if you're UCF, how do you keep up? If we're removing the guardrails that some people asked for and we're letting teams spin into oblivion.
Look, there's been so much back and forth with this House settlement thing. Like, I'm sure you saw the thing with Trump's, executive order too. He's trying to take it back the other direction. Like, he's trying to say there's going to be more competitiveness with it. I think it's still going to be a mess because, like, you're right. Like Alabama, there's no way they're just spending that money because some of the kids are getting, they're paying them like $600,000-$700,000 minimum per year, probably right out of high school. And that's pay for play. And the NIL clearinghouse is probably going to flag a lot of these, but they're just going to pay kids separately. And they're not going to include it. And they're not going to talk about it. That's what's going to happen. That's how this is going to work.
Yeah.
These schools, these boosters are not going to put their money back in their pockets. It's not going to happen. This idea that there's going to be quote unquote competitiveness, it's going to be balance in college football. Mike, I got some swampland in South Alabama that is just for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Believe that all you want. Like it's grossly stupid. So I don't know what UCF does to compete with Alabama. I don't think they really can because that's a different tax bracket that you're talking about that they're willing to spend. UCF's got plenty of money. They just don't want to dump it all into football. I mean, that school's got a ton of money. But if you're going to compete at that level, especially for the linemen, like we were just talking about in the last segment, you got to spend cash. Those D linemen, like those D tackles, that's 7 figures for those elite kids and up.
Yeah.
To sign.
I remember at the inception of NIL, Texas had this organization called Hearts for Horns, and it was some Texas boosters, and you probably heard of this, and they pretty much just put it out there that they were doing $75,000 a year NIL deals with any lineman, that offensive lineman that signed with Texas.
That was smart.
And
Really
they
smart.
signed the best O-line class in the country that cycle. And look,
Yeah.
it helped lay the groundwork for what Steve Sarkisian was building. All these guys that come from the Nick Saban coaching tree, they know, look, no matter where you're coaching, if I can go out and I can build my lines, I have a chance to compete. So you need money to do that these days. I mean, those guys are bringing in big time cash. If you are a star left tackle, if you're a star center, if you're one of the best in the country at on that offensive line, you're going to get paid in today's college football.
That is a fact. And that's why about 10 or so schools are a little bit different than just about everybody else. Like you look at national title game, Ohio State and Notre Dame had guys injured on their offensive lines, and they still made it all the way to the national title game. It's because they recruit at a ridiculous level in the trenches on both sides, honestly, but especially O-line. That's the difference. That's why I keep bringing it up with UCF. You don't necessarily have to recruit what Ohio State does, but if you can just get 4 guys or more every year, the law of averages are going to break your way more often than not. That's my biggest concern with UCF. So the NIL part of this, if you really want to ramp it up, you got to get at least one of those guys, like a left tackle, like you said, or a center that's just a total dude. But even if you don't get that guy every year, every 2 or 3 years, you got to get somebody that you can hang your hat on, that on 3rd and 1, you can just run counter or dive or something like that and go get yourself first down. It's not too much to ask. Again, you're selling Orlando. It should not be that hard, Mike. It really should not be that hard. Your dog can recruit somebody to UCF. It's not that hard. I know they're not a tradition-rich blue blood, but they're in a P4 conference and they're in Orlando, man.
Yeah.
It's not that hard.
Yeah. Look, Scott Frost has got work to do in year one. The results on the field will speak as to the ceiling of what they can do, and ultimately will signal to potential recruits, yes, that's someplace where they can win, because all this talk about money and NIL, Brian, guys still want to win and they still want to go to the NFL. So development still matters, right? The opportunity to play still matters. And, if you can be a winning program, certainly, for what you lack in money, maybe you can make up in other traditional recruiting tenants. So we'll see what they'll do with it. I appreciate you joining me as always here on Locked On UCF. Before we get out of here, tell people where they can find you.
Locked On the Portal, recruiting, NIL, preseason predictions across college football, and of course the transfer portal. Once we get back into that, that'll be the wildest time at the end of the season. Check us out on the Portal Podcast.
Please go over to Locked On the Portal. Subscribe to Brian. Subscribe to us here. We are dangerously close to 1,000 subscribers. We appreciate your support. Thank you for making Locked On UCF your first listen of every single day. We'll be back at you guys tomorrow with more Locked On UCF.